It started with silence. The kind that settles into a home when the people in it stop trying. My husband had become more of a presence than a partner, always traveling, always in meetings, always somewhere else.
We used to talk, laugh,
Fight even. Now we just existed in the same space, passing like shadows in a hallway. When Ethan moved in, it was supposed to be temporary. My sister's son, fresh out of college, trying to find his footing. He was respectful, quiet, the kind who always said thank you and cleared his plate. I didn't expect him to notice me. I didn't expect to feel noticed. At first, it was little things. He'd offer to help with groceries, ask if I wanted coffee. We'd sit and talk about nothing, and I found myself laughing, really laughing for the first time in months. One night, we stayed up watching a movie while the rain tapped against the windows. My husband was on a business trip. Ethan asked me what my favorite movie was as a kid, and when I told him, he found it online, and we watched it together. I forgot someone else was in the house. I began to wait for those moments. When he came downstairs in the morning, when he leaned against the kitchen counter, when he'd glance over with those eyes that always seemed to ask questions he never spoke aloud. There was nothing inappropriate, nothing crossed, but something was growing, unspoken, slow, and dangerous. I caught him watching me one afternoon while I trimmed the garden. He didn't look away. I didn't either. That night, I lay in bed beside my husband, unable to sleep, replaying the look in Ethan's eyes like a song stuck on loop. Then came the night I couldn't hold it in. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, and something cracked inside me. Tears started falling without permission. I didn't hear Ethan come in, but suddenly he was there, asking softly, "Are you okay?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lie, but I didn't. I shook my head, and he stepped closer. His presence was calm, steady, and I leaned into him. He didn't pull away. That was the first time I felt it, guilt, desire, comfort all tangled up in a single heartbeat. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just lonely, that this would pass. But loneliness doesn't just go away, especially not when someone is finally looking at you like you matter. Ethan started leaving his door open at night. I started walking a little slower past it. The air between us changed, more charged, more loaded. And I started dressing up in ways I hadn't in years. Lipstick, perfume I hadn't worn since my 20s. There was no plan, no agenda, just moments. Building. Quietly. Constantly. And the worst part? I didn't want it to stop. It didn't take long for the shift to become undeniable. I was living two lives inside one house, and the lines were starting to blur. Ethan and I became gravity for each other, pulled together by something we both tried to ignore but couldn't. He stopped knocking before entering a room. I stopped caring if he did. There was a comfort in him that made me forget how much I'd been pretending. We started sharing small things, songs, memories, secrets we probably had no business exchanging. One night, he told me about a girl who broke his heart in college. I told him about the first time I realized my husband had stopped listening when I spoke. The truth felt safer with Ethan than it did in my own bedroom. I started timing my showers for when I thought Ethan was out. But part of me wasn't sure if I wanted him to be gone. That afternoon, I came out of the bathroom with just a towel, hair dripping, and he was standing in the hallway. We froze. No excuses. No quick cover-up. Just eyes locked, breaths held. Then he said it. Calm, low. "Put on your clothes." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't anger. It was restraint. After that, everything changed. We never talked about that moment, but it stayed between us like a live wire. I couldn't look at him without remembering it. Couldn't walk past him without feeling like I'd already done something wrong, even though technically I hadn't.
Not yet.
But the energy between us didn't cool. It thickened. Every conversation was sharper. Every glance was heavier. I started feeling guilty for the way I looked at him. Guilty for the way my body responded when he stood too close. Guilty for the dreams that left me breathless and ashamed. And yet, I kept choosing it. Choosing the silence. The proximity. The danger. I told myself I was in control. That it would never go further. That it was just a phase. But late one night, I passed his room and found the door ajar. He was awake, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. He looked up at me like he'd been waiting. I didn't speak. I didn't walk away. Neither did he. We were both too far in to pretend we weren't feeling it. But neither of us moved. It was a standoff between fear and temptation. I left without a word, but the air felt scorched behind me. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about what it would feel like to let go. The craving started to replace the guilt. I began to avoid mirrors, afraid of what I'd see in my own eyes. This wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical. It was real. And it was only a matter of time before one of us stopped holding back. It started with silence, like something inevitable that settles into a home warning. When the people in it stopped no grand trying. Confession. My husband just had a moment more of a presence than a partner. One night, always traveling, I was in the kitchen, always in barefoot, meetings, pouring always wine, somewhere else, and he came in behind me. I turned, and before I could think, now we just existed in the same space. There was no hesitation, like shadows in a hallway. I didn't stop him. When Ethan moved in, it was supposed to be temporary. After that, we stopped pretending. My sister's son, the affair didn't need words. Trying to find his footing. It lived in late-night whispers. He was respectful in the way he touched my back when no one was thank you, and how he found reasons to be alone. I didn't expect him to notice every interaction. I didn't expect to feel every breath near him. Felt like it was little things. I told myself it was temporary. Asked that if I was feeling something my marriage had long abandoned. Talk about nothing. That Ethan was just a passing storm. But it didn't feel like for the first time in months. It felt like awakening. One night, my husband became a stranger while the rain tapped against the windows. He'd call when he traveled, my husband was on a business trip. Ethan asked me what my favorite movie was as a kid, texting Ethan, and when I told him, the guilt came in waves, and we watched it together. Drowned it every time. I forgot someone else was in the house. I started dreading the sound of my husband's key in the door. When he came downstairs in the morning, when they spoke, when he leaned against the kitchen played counter, the perfect guest. When he glanced over with those eyes that always seemed to ask questions, but the looks we shared in passing were nothing inappropriate. Ethan became restless, but something was growing, started to bother him. Slow, he wanted more, and dangerous. He'd ask questions I had no answer to. I caught him watching me one afternoon while I trimmed the garden. Do you ever wish it was just us? He didn't look away. Would you leave him if you could? I didn't either. I avoided answering. I lay in bed beside my husband, that side of the truth. Unable to sleep. I kept clinging to the illusion that I still had control. On loop. But I was lying to myself. I couldn't hold it in. Every time we touched, I was in the kitchen. I gave more wiping down the counters, and I noticed the changes inside me. The way I dressed, tears started falling. The way I walked. Even how I hear Ethan come in, people began to ask what had changed, asking softly. Blamed yoga. Are you okay? New skincare. I wanted to say yes. Anything but the real reason. I wanted to lie. Then came the message. I shook my head. Everything stepped closer. A simple text from my husband. His presence was calm, home early, and I leaned into him. My hands trembled reading it. That was the first time I felt it start ticking on the life I had built on secrets. Comfort all tangled up in a single heartbeat, and didn't hesitate. I told myself it was nothing. We can leave, he said. That I was just I'll go wherever you go. That this would pass. But it wasn't that simple. Loneliness doesn't just go away. There were years of history, especially not when someone is built finally looking at you like you matter. Convenience. Ethan started leaving his door open at night. Ethan and I had to survive outside, a little slower past it, and the air between us changed. I didn't answer him. More charged. I didn't say loaded. And I started dressing up in ways I hadn't in years. The night before my husband returned, lipstick, perfume I hadn't worn since my 20s. Completely exposed. There was no plan, physically, but no agenda. Just he kissed my forehead like he owned that part of me now. And constantly. In that moment, and I wasn't thinking about consequences. I didn't want it to stop. I was only thinking about how I felt more alive in undeniable. 3 weeks of lies. I was living 2 lives inside one house. But time doesn't stop. And the lines were starting to blur. And secrets don't stay buried forever. Gravity for each other. The unraveling pulled together by something we both tried to ignore but couldn't. No slammed knocking before entering a room. Heavier than anything I'd ever felt. There was a comfort in him that made me forget how much I'd been pretending. A hotel bill tucked between bank statements. We started sharing small things, a name that wasn't his, memories, a date that didn't match his calendar. We had no business. He didn't say anything that night. One night, just stared at me about a girl who broke his heart in college. He was seeing someone. I told him about the first time I realized my husband had stopped listening when I spoke and left. The truth felt safer with Ethan. No questions in my own bedroom. Just a single line before the door shut. For when I thought Ethan was worth it. But I didn't cry. Me wasn't sure if I wanted him to be gone. That afternoon, something permanent had broken. I came out of the bathroom Ethan with just showed up later that evening, hair dripping, eyes searching mine for standing answers. In the hallway. I told him everything. No excuses. About the receipt. No about my quick husband leaving. Just eyes locked. How it all came crashing held. Down. Then just like he said it would. Calm, he held my face and said, "Put on your clothes. Now we can be free." It wasn't a joke, but freedom felt like a punishment. It was
I wasn't ready to
restraint.
call it love.
After that, everything
I wasn't ready
changed.
to call it anything.
We never talked about
the
that
fantasy
moment,
had
but
always
it's been
stayed
wrapped
between
in
us
secrecy,
like a live
in
wire.
stolen hours.
I couldn't look at
I
him
didn't know if
without
it could breathe
remembering
in the
it.
light.
Couldn't
I
walk
asked
past
him
him
to give
without
me
feeling
space.
like I'd
His
already
face
done
fell,
something
but he
wrong.
nodded.
Even
Tell
though
me you didn't
technically
just use
I
me
hadn't.
to feel something,
Not
he
yet.
said. But the
I
energy
couldn't
between
answer
us didn't cool.
because
it
I didn't
thickened.
know the truth
Every
yet.
conversation
Maybe
was
I had.
sharper. Maybe
Every
we both
glance
had.
was heavier.
He left without
I started
looking back.
feeling guilty
Days
for the way I
passed.
looked at him.
Then weeks.
Guilty for the way my
The
body
house was
responded
quieter
when he
than
stood
ever,
too close.
and now the silence
Guilty for the
wasn't just
dreams
between
that
two
left me
people.
breathless.
It was
and
mine
ashamed.
alone.
And
No
yet,
husband,
I
no
kept choosing
Ethan.
it. Just
Choosing the
echoes
silence,
of choices
the proximity,
I couldn't undo.
the danger.
I started going
I
through
told
old
myself
drawers,
I was in
trying to
control,
remember who I had
that it
been
would
before
never go
all this.
further.
There
That
were
it was
letters
just a
from years
phase.
ago,
But
photos
late one
from
night,
anniversaries
I
where we
passed his
smiled
room
for the camera,
and found the
but
door
barely
ajar.
touched each other off
He was
screen.
awake,
Maybe
sitting on the edge
affair
of his
wasn't
bed,
the beginning of the
staring
end.
at the floor.
Maybe it was just
He
the
looked up at
truth
me like
catching
he'd
up to
been
a lie
waiting.
we'd both been
I
living
didn't
for
speak.
too long.
I didn't walk
I still
away.
don't know if Ethan
Neither
hated
did
me
he.
after that.
We were both
didn't
too
reach
far
out.
in to
I
pretend
didn't
we weren't
either.
feeling it.
Some
But neither of
endings
us
don't
moved.
need closure.
It was a
They
standoff
just
between
fade.
fear
What
and
hurt most
temptation.
wasn't losing
I
either
left
of them.
without a word.
It was realizing
but the
I'd
air
lost
felt
myself
scorched
long
behind
before they
me.
walked away.
I couldn't stop
Now,
thinking
I
about
moved
him,
differently about
I
what it would
speak
feel like
less.
to let go.
I've learned
The
that not
craving
all
started
love
to
is
replace
pure,
the guilt,
and not all
I began
betrayal
to
is
avoid
loud.
mirrors.
Sometimes
Afraid
it
of what I'd
creeps
see
in
in my
with
own
kindness.
eyes.
This
With
wasn't
comfort,
just emotional
with
anymore.
someone simply
It
asking
was
how your
physical.
day was.
It was
I
real.
used to think infidelity
and it was
about
only a matter
lust,
of time
but
before
it's
one
not.
of us stopped holding
It's about
back.
absence, about emptiness so deep that when someone finally looks at you like you matter, you forget the cost. I haven't told anyone the full story. I probably never will. What happened with Ethan didn't destroy my life. It just revealed the cracks I'd been ignoring. I loved him, maybe. Or maybe I just loved the version of myself I was when I was with him. Either way, he's gone. And I'm still here,